I have been blown away by this book. I enjoyed writing it very much. I waited about 10 years to write this book. I was myself diagnosed with breast cancer in 2014, and I turned out to have the BRCA mutation. I had tested for it once in my 40s and once in my 50s, and it tested negative. And I only kept testing because I had a very strong family history. But once I tested negative the second time, I thought, okay, I'm good. Found a lump in my breast and was diagnosed with early breast cancer. And I went through all the conventional treatment. I had a double mastectomy. And they said to me, well, you just need a little radiation and a lumpectomy, a little radiation. And I said, take them. I don't want to revisit this again. My mother had died of breast cancer as a young woman. My sister had had it several times. And I was pretty clear we might not have that mutation, but we must have something. So, and then sometime during my treatment, they said, you should get tested for the BRCA mutation. I was like, I just got tested last year. And they're like, the test got better. So for me, it was really profoundly bad timing, if you could say.
What is the BRCA mutation?
Okay. The BRCA mutation is something that everybody inherits one BRCA gene from each parent. And the role of the BRCA gene is to go around and help identify and get rid of cancer cells in the body. And if you have one from each parent and one is kind of funky, it doesn't work as well. And in our family, we carry a deletion, which is a kind of mutation. We only ever had one. So if that one goes funky, it doesn't work as well. And it's common among Ashkenazi Jewish women, but we don't have the monopoly on it. It can really affect any populations across European, African, South American, Asian descent. So it is a lifetime risk, 85–90% chance of developing some kinds of cancer. So it's a pretty high risk. Of course, I think the people that we should be studying are the people who are 90, who have the BRCA mutation, who never got cancer. That's who we really should be studying, So I did everything conventional medicine offered, pretty aggressive treatment, even though it was early cancer, negative nodes, clean margins. I had a very good prognosis. Everybody said, you're not going to die from this cancer. You're young, your health. I was 54 at the time. I was premenopausal. I had not stopped my periods yet. So when you have the BRCA mutation, the idea then is also to remove your ovaries, because when people get ovarian cancer, they tend to get it, when they're diagnosed, it tends to be later and more serious and harder to treat. They said to me, well, why don't you wait and give yourself a year and then we can remove you can have a hysterectomy. And I said, you know what, I had found the lump on January 1st. In fact, speaking of ballroom dance, I had been out dancing the night before. I think I danced every single dance for 4 hours or something crazy. Never felt better. I looked fantastic. And I found this lump in my breast. I was like, oh, you have to be kidding. But anyway, that was January 1st. And I didn't want to bring it all into the following year. So I basically said to my doctors, let's wait until my hematocrit, my blood levels and my iron, gets to 35. When I get to 35, recovering from the chemo from the prior cancer, then let's remove my ovaries. And when they went to remove my ovaries, I had cancer on both ovaries. It was like Happy New Year all over again, and that was in July. So I had a complete hysterectomy, and I had 12 more rounds of chemo, and that ended. My last chemo was January 2nd the following year. It was quite a year. But the truth of it is that with natural medicine approaches, there's so many things one can do to help enhance the efficacy of conventional medicine. In other words, make cancer cells more chemosensitive or more radiosensitive while protecting the underlying organs and other systems of the body. And there's things that you can do to prevent side effects that are common from the aggressive needed treatments, and then to address side effects that arise. And then afterward, to mop up, which is really the topic of the book. And I waited about 10 years to write the book because I didn't want to seem cavalier. I wanted to model that all these healthy approaches related to the things we're going to talk about actually had a good effect on an individual. And I just didn't want to jinx myself. Well, about a year after the book got published, I was diagnosed with leukemia. I just I never should have written that book. And they really believe it's secondary leukemia, which is a kind of leukemia that you get from the chemotherapy. So the sort of needed chemotherapy, it puts you at risk for certain kinds of cancers. I had ALL, there's different kinds of leukemia, and I was a good candidate for a stem cell transplant. So a year ago, I had a stem cell transplant. I had a 23-year-old Israeli donor who last month I got to meet via Zoom. They make you wait a year. They want to make sure that you make it so that the person doesn't feel bad, I guess. Maya is my amazing stem cell donor. She's met my whole family now. I feel like I have another daughter, which is sort of the opposite of what it is, but she's all that. She's fabulous. And I feel perfect. You know, people say to me, well, you know, you must have like brain fog, or you must be tired, or you must, I feel whatever I used to feel, however blessed I've been with excellent, wonderful, vibrant health, I feel very good. And I'm 65, I just turned 65. So, what can I attribute all of that to? I think I basically have, besides this terrible sort of genetic inheritance of this one messed up gene, I think I'm sort of peasant stock. I come from very healthy people. The people that don't have the BRCA mutation, they all live to be in their 90s. And so I'm basically really a healthy person. I just keep getting cancer, you know, go figure. But it's important to think about that because for a lot of folks who get diagnosed with cancer, it's how healthy they are or were going into the diagnosis that has a lot of impact on how they are able to handle conventional medical care. It's not for the faint of heart. Some of these treatments are extremely harsh. But they're also incredibly effective, and the conventional medical world has gotten better at using less and less of the toxic stuff. What's the least amount we can use to get rid of the cancer, as opposed to when my mom passed away in the mid-70s, it was really what's the most amount we can give that won't kill the person. It was very, she died really not from cancer, she died from the treatments that were so intensely aggressive. So I find it a very compelling topic. I'm a general practice naturopathic doctor. My practice is not all oncology, but increasingly I treat a lot of people in the cancer world because I have a lot of street cred because of the book and all of that. But I don't want a whole practice of cancer patients. It's like too much, you know. Like, I like the kids with eczema and the people with osteoporosis, and give me somebody with a little, you know, hypertension, like GERD. You know, that's fun to treat also. But in terms of what are things that people can do after going through cancer care, I think that it's true they're very good for helping people recover from cancer care, but they're also very good for the prevention of a lot of other things: heart disease, diabetes, cognitive decline, cancer. It's a lot of similar information, which makes sense because in an environment where there's less inflammation and there's better circulation and there's more nourishment in general that is anti-inflammatory, that's going to be the best environment for many chronic illnesses. And now we know about 85% of, okay, let this fire truck go by. It's an emergency here. It's a public health emergency because we have really bad health habits in this country. Yeah, I mean, it is 85% of the 3 big killers, so that's diabetes, heart disease, and cancer in this country, are lifestyle preventable. That's not like my idea, that's not my research, that's sort of a public health declaration that came out a couple of years ago, which is something that, of course, I have known my whole career, and I've almost 40 years in this business. So, yeah, I mean, there's many choices we can make that can lead us down paths that will be healthier and will be preventive, and it's never too late to start. I mean, that's the key. Because I'm not talking to people like, oh, I didn't do that for my first 60 years. And like, you can start anytime. There's always room for improvement. And for cancer survivors, probably the number one thing that a person can do is exercise. It's just the number one thing. And it's true for a few reasons. Exercise raises your threshold for feeling stress. It helps you dissipate the stress that you have. And it helps you be better perfused, meaning that your blood moves around more. So that amplifies every other good choice you make when you don't have that second glass of wine, when you don't have that sugary drink, when you don't have that stressful relationship with that person anymore. Like all of the good choices you make when you exercise, you amplify those good choices. When we exercise, we are also putting stress on our bones. That helps keep calcium in the bones, of course. People know that by now. Exercise, I think about in 3 formats. The first one's aerobic. If you're only going to do one, do the aerobic. That's like the walking, the running, the swimming, the dancing, something that gets your heart rate up. The second one is something that is stretchy because we all need to be working as we get older on our balance. So that's the yoga, the tai chi, the qigong, the getting on the floor and stretching like you learned how to do when you were in 7th grade. And the third one is weight bearing or resistance training with weights or TheraBands. And we need all three, but if you're only going to do one, do the aerobic. Because it's just, we always say motion is lotion. Like when you move more, you keep your joints, your ligaments, your soft tissue better nourished, yes, but also sort of lubricated. And when people are sedentary, that's when, I don't know if you've ever had the experience that you sit all day and then you try to get up and you're like, oh, I feel like I'm 80 years old, yeah, that's because you are not lubricating the soft tissue and the joints as well as you could. So, I always say to my patients, like, however much you're exercising is probably not enough. And so what is the ideal amount? It's very individual, but I would say for most people, it's got to be like an hour, hour and a half a day. And so I appreciate that for people that are working and maybe raising a family, it's hard to find an hour a day. For everybody else who's like maybe not working as much, or like you either got to start the day with it or end the day with it, or shoehorn it in at lunch, or do it in 20-minute chunks a few times a day. I often work with patients one-on-one. It's like just troubleshooting and problem solving. Like, where can we get it in? Where can we get it in? It's not okay just to say I can't exercise. That's not going to be a good solution to many things. For cancer survivors, one of the main things that cancer survivors struggle with, and there's a whole list, is fatigue. And fatigue of chronic disease is, cancer survivors is one sort of chapter of that. What we know is that exercise is one of the main things that helps with the fatigue that comes after cancer treatment. Even though it's counterintuitive. A lot of people are so tired, I can't get off the couch, I can't move. And I'm like, I promise you, if you just get yourself, just use your phone. Today, let's try to do 250 steps, even if it's up and down your hallway, 250 steps. And then next week, we're going to go up to 500 steps. And you just got to kind of spoon feed. For me, that's my job. Inspire people, encourage people, find ways that they can move into some exercise that's going to work for them where they won't get injured. My big thing is like, I'm like sort of a gym rat. I was first wave at Title IX. I did 3 sports through high school. I was very athletic. And then in my 30s, I found, of all things, rollerblading. Okay, I love to rollerblade. I don't know, something about rollerblading. And then when I got a little older, somebody gave me the headphones with the little iPod, the iPod, and you could do music. Then after a while, I was like, I'm on the bike path. Is anybody going to hear me? I got rid of the headphones. I just blast the music while I'm rollerblading. But then I started ballroom dancing, and I fell in love with ballroom in my early 50s. And I was so afraid I was going to get hurt rollerblading that I wouldn't be able to ballroom. So I stopped blading for about 10 years. But I started again. Now I can do both. Finding something new is great. Going back to something you used to love. Doing something. Some people are really into exercising if they do with other people, make it social. For a lot of people, if they make a date to do a walk with a friend, they won't crap out on them, or they crap out on themselves. So I was like, do it social if that works for you. Some of us prefer to exercise alone. I don't want to be doing it with anybody else. It doesn't matter, just find something. Okay, so fatigue is a huge thing. Problems with the digestive system are very common because a lot of the approaches used in conventional medicine are hard on the GI. So the naturopathic approaches to GI complaints depends on what the problems are. If it's something like gastroesophageal reflux, or something like constipation, or loose stools, or just not feeling right, we work a lot with the microbiome. The microbiome is basically everything between your clavicles and your hip bones that's not like a bone, a joint, an organ, your spine. It's the milieu, if you will, that everything's living in. And your microbiome is very important to the quality of your digestion. It's also important for your immune function, your mood, your cognition. And the more we study the microbiome, the more we understand it's related to almost everything. And the microbiome gets wiped out by chemotherapy. Radiation doesn't help it. People eating foods to which they're sensitive, not good. Alcohol is just not good for the microbiome. So there's lots of leverage points that we have for helping people with their digestive type symptoms. Other problems that people have, and I'm going to leave time for Q&A so I can answer your questions if you have any, but lymphedema, peripheral neuropathy, these are both problems that are common from conventional cancer care. Cardiovascular issues, especially if radiation in women has been done on the left side. I always say to women, if you're going to get breast cancer, try to get it on the right breast. If you can choose, can't always choose, because of the underlying organ, the heart there. So we use therapeutic nutrition through food, nutritional supplements based on what the symptoms are, botanical medicine, the use of herbs, and things like homeopathy and acupuncture, all to sort of bring the body back into a better balance and address the symptoms that a person has. So I only have a little bit here to talk, so I can't go into all the details, but in my book I lay out, here are the naturopathic medicine approaches to the treatment of lymphedema. Here are the naturopathic medicine approaches to the treatment of peripheral neuropathy, and I kind of go through a lot of these main challenges. The other thing that I would say happens for a lot of cancer survivors is that they get depressed. And first of all, many of the treatments used in cancer have as a side effect depression, separate and distinct from just the fact that it's depressing. It's depressing. People feel like, I did all these things right. I always did everything right. Why me? Am I going to die? Is this the end? I mean, there's many, many reasons people can be depressed. And then also the treatments themselves have as one side effect depression. So one of the ways that we counter depression, first of all, exercise we know is a beautiful treatment for depression. Working on the microbiome really helps with depression. Getting people the kind of therapeutic setting that they need with the right kind of therapist who has experience working with cancer patients, very important. And then for me, I have seen in my own practice that, and it depends on the individual, but connecting with other people who have had a similar path, for some people is essential. They just feel so much better if they can sit with another individual or in a group. And the statistics on people that do these support groups and support system kind of things for cancer survivorship, the research on that is excellent. I personally did not want that. The last thing I wanted to do was sit around with a bunch of cancer survivors. I was just like, oh my God, I got to move on. What else are we going to talk about? I don't need to talk about that anymore. But that's me. But for other people, like Cancer Connection in Northampton, the House of Hope in West Springfield, these are incredible resources for people with free programming, befriending groups. And I mean, I can't emphasize how important that can be for a lot of people, getting through and past their identity as a cancer patient. Now, for some people, being a cancer patient, being a cancer survivor becomes a very, very big part of their identity, and that's totally fine. Other people really are ready to pivot and move on to something else. Whatever floats your boat is fine, of course. In terms of survivorship and people, their feeling of well-being, I would say that the research and the evidence and the advances in conventional medicine are really remarkable. Having a cancer diagnosis now is not the same life sentence it once was for the vast majority of people. Not everybody, and not every time. I'm living proof. I spent a lot of time in the hospital last year getting ready for a stem cell transplant. That's not for the faint of heart. They have to almost kill you before they give you your new cells. And I kind of made friends with the hospital. I decorated my room real nice. I had my guitar there. I had my little art table set up. I had visitors galore. I brought only my own food. I did not want to eat hospital food. Did anybody ever make those little pot holders when you were little on those little looms? Well, I got into like a cottage industry. I just was making pot holders and giving them to all my nurses, because you have 2 nurses a day, like 12-hour shifts. And so toward the end, I was in the hospital for about a month for the actual transplant. Toward the end, the nurses would come on staff and they'd be like, by the way, I have a little bit of yellow in my kitchen if you're going to be making pot holders, I tried to turn it around, give people my own love and energy the best that I could. That was my way. Other people just have to kind of hunker down and get through it, and there's no right way to do cancer. There's no right way to do life. There's no right way to do any illness. I did it the way I would do anything else, so I feel like what I don't like is when I get a patient who comes in, they're like, I feel so crappy. I got this symptom, this symptom, this symptom on these different systems of my body. My bones went to crap with treatment. My digestion's ruined. I'm totally depressed. I'm swollen this. And they feel deflated, defeated, discouraged. So, and they feel like this is, and they'll say to me, but it's okay, like I'm alive. And I'm like, that is not okay. Yes, you're alive, but we can do better here. We can do better. We break it down, like what is the thing that's most limiting to them right now at this point in time? Where are the leverage points that are going to have the most impact on their feeling of well-being and on the specific symptoms that they have? And so we try to draw up plans that people won't be overwhelmed by, that they can actually do, that they can afford, that they can stick with, that they can get support and encouragement with and for from the people around them. And it's really very gratifying work. I mean, for me, it's very gratifying and helping people. Do people sometimes get cancer again? Do some people die? Yes. I mean, we're all going to die from something. It is part of the contract here. But hopefully not too soon, and hopefully nobody's suffering too much. That's the thing. We have a dear friend who passed away in 3 days. He didn't feel too good. He was dead in 3 days. A couple of weeks ago, my husband and I were like, it's terrible that he died, but man, that is the way to go. Instead of like struggling for months and years on end. Yeah, that's what I have to say about survivorship. I will say that one of the most important things people can do is to feel empowered with their providers. I think a lot of people feel a victim of the system, and it is a big cancer, process, and it's very overwhelming. So I always say to people, bring somebody with you always. Meet your doctor dressed. Do not meet a doctor in a gown. You always meet every doctor who's going to work with, fully dressed. I can't emphasize that enough. Tell the doctor ahead of time, I have a list of questions. I want to be sure we save time for my questions. Record the visit. Ask them if you can record the visit, because there's a lot of information coming at you and a lot about cancer's decision making, and a lot's waiting around, waiting for results, waiting for the scan, waiting for this, waiting for that, and that is crazy making. So one of the things, that I emphasize as a whole chapter in the book is about the head game. This is true for cancer survivors. It's probably true for everybody. I feel like every class, course, podcast, book that I sort of invested in through my 30s, 40s, 50s, around mindfulness meditation, around breathing exercises, around yoga, around how to have a gratitude practice. These are things that I intentionally went after and learned and absorbed into my soul, if you will. And I'm so glad that I had all, and I grew up in a spiritual household, so I had a strong sense of spirituality and connection to that whole world, which is helpful. Thank goodness I have needed to lean into those things so many times. Sitting, waiting for the diagnosis, sitting, waiting for the bone marrow biopsy, sitting, hearing the story, the person next door's story, and trying not to overhear, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Thank goodness I had some skills. So I always say to people who are like my kids, like in their 30s, I'm like, you guys, you got to work on some skill sets, because life sometimes hands you like a lemon, and you got to have some skills that you can bring to it in the moment so that you're not totally destroyed by it in terms of your head game. So whatever you're doing, or whatever you can do, whatever you can think of doing that gives you joy, that gives you pleasure, that gives you peace, that gives you contentment, that gives you the capacity to be and sit with difficult news and difficult information, those things are all really worth it, even though you might not feel like you need them right now. That's great, you don't need them right now, but pretty much everybody's going to need them sometime. So I think working on our head games is worth it. And we're going to all need different kinds of head games depending on our personalities and temperaments and all that. So, and then also don't forget the power of distraction. A good video game, I don't really do that, but a good, TV show or music or, whatever is fine, and that's good too. And I will tell you that when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, my first chemotherapy, I watched the very first episode of Downton Abbey. And at my very last episode, it was 6 seasons, 7 seasons, I watched the very last episode. We meted it out so it would end. And then the very next weekend, there was a Downton Abbey ball at the log cabin that we got all dressed up for. I had hardly any hair, but we went to that ball. It was a really nice bookend. So anyway, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to know. The research is getting better and better. Everything in my book is evidence-informed, meaning that there have been studies on people about using, let's say, the herb curcumin that we know has a lot of anti-cancer effects. Mushrooms, tremendous anti-cancer effects. There's terrific research on people, on everything that I mention in the book. So I'm not like making it up. And also, I do every single thing in this book. I mean, like, people say to me, like, you must not do anything else. It's like a full-time job. I'm like, yeah, pretty much. I also intentionally started working less after I was in my 50s, and we had made a good living our whole career. So I started working less and doing more of the things that I really love. Artwork, playing the guitar, hanging out with friends, political work in the community, stuff at my synagogue, and that's just been great. And now I have a grandchild, so that's, the cherry on the top of everything. And I hope everybody appreciates that there's some things that you can do and that you're not sort of a lame duck. And there's processes and decisions and diets and supplements. There are things that you can do that can help you optimize whatever you got going on at this time. All right, let's hear your questions. What kind of questions do you have? Yeah.
First of all, it was a very encouraging talk.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful spirit, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you had heard of proton therapy.
I'm not an expert in proton therapy. I would put that in the category of some of the new amazing kinds of approaches that are being used. And for some people with certain diagnoses, that's going to be the way to go. I myself was the recipient not only with the leukemia of a stem cell transplant, but I had chemotherapy for 1 month, then another month, and then I had immunotherapy, which is another newer, not proton therapy, something different. We're basically training your own immune system to recognize and go after and destroy cancer cells. So all of these new advances, it's remarkable. And in fact, some of the political things that are happening now, cutting grants at the NIH, is just like, what? It's like, doesn't make any sense at all. Because these advances are really life-saving, things like proton therapy in there. CAR T therapy, these are all things that are just, yeah. I literally feel like I have that energy of that 23-year-old donor. I really do. I got to meet her recently, and I will tell you one thing, by Zoom, she's in Israel, she's fabulous, and she has a big head of curly hair. I have very straight hair, so if you see this, I was like, oh, okay. A lot of times people's hair grows back different, but it doesn't seem to be straightening. It's been like a year. We'll see. And the other thing I asked her is like, Maya, what is your attitude toward high places? She says, what do you mean? I said, well, do you like to go into high places? She says, oh, I like to bungee jump. I've jumped out of planes. I've rock climbed. I seem to have lost my fear of heights. I've lost my fear of heights. I was cleaning out the gutters the other day. I was like, yeah. And also, I now crave spicy food, which I never did before. It's interesting. Nobody really knows how stem cell transplants work. You get the stem cells. They come in a little bag. It's like you could put a tuna fish sandwich in. It's just ridiculous. And it goes in your arm. Takes about 20 minutes. And then it takes about 3 to 4 weeks before they find their way to your marrow and engraft and start then making the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and the platelets, which is what happens in the bone marrow. For everybody. And nobody really knows how they know how to get there and how they know what to do. It's crazy. And so those 3 weeks, you just have to lay around real careful because you have no white blood cells. You have basically no platelets and almost no red cells. So you could either bleed out because you can't coagulate, or you can die from an infection. And they lose 15, 20% of people in the process of getting them ready for a transplant. Now that number is going down because they're getting better at treating people during it. But when they told me that, I was like, 20%. Okay, that's not gonna be me. What are you gonna say, I got all my affairs in order though, because you never know. One of the days that I was in the hospital, I'm such a chipper person. They're coming in for your vitals every 3 hours through the night. So I like to talk to they're all women. There was one male nurse, I never had him. All women, I like to talk to the gals. So this particular gal, I sat up because I wanted to just be more chatty at like 4 in the morning. And my blanket was sort of underneath my butt. So I kind of pulled my blanket out like that, and it let go while I was pulling on it, and I fell and I hit my head on the bed, the foot of the bed. Not very hard, literally not very hard. And she was like, oh, we have to get you a CAT scan of your brain. You could have a bleed in your brain. I'm like, I hardly tapped it. Like 5 minutes later, I was down in the basement of Mass General getting a CAT scan of my brain. I was just like, yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things I would say to people who are starting, if they're just recently diagnosed. It's like, there's going to be bumps on the way. You have to just be prepared. There's going to be bumps. It's a metaphor for life. There's going to be bumps in everybody's life. Some of them are bigger than others. You're going to have bumps. So, you can't go too high with the good news. You can't go too low with the bad news. You've got to get some equanimity in there. Otherwise, you're going to find that you're a very unhappy person. Okay. Other questions? Yes.
Oh, so many questions. First of all, I want to say you've always had the spirit and energy of a 23-year-old.
Thank you. Thank you.
When you were talking about how increasingly medicine is incorporating these kind of like more like non-traditional kinds of elements into it, or more, I don't know what you were saying, more alternative or naturopathic or whatever.
Do I think that's happening?
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's happening. I think that patients are driving, wanting that. There's a lot of patients who are asking, what else can I do? Is it okay? Like, I'll give you a great example. There's a lot of chemotherapy that's very hard on, it causes peripheral neuropathy. And there's some wonderful stuff. Peripheral neuropathy, you can't feel your hands, it's painful, hurts to walk. And for a lot of people, after the chemo's over, the neuropathy goes away. For some people, it doesn't. We know now that fish oil and B-complex vitamins helps to prevent peripheral neuropathy. And certain chemotherapies are known to cause the peripheral neuropathy. Something else that people can do is they can do the mittens, cold mittens, and cold booties. And what happens with the coldness is that the tiny capillaries vasoconstrict, and when they vasoconstrict, the chemotherapy doesn't get all the way to that area. It's the same idea of people using the cold cap, where the chemotherapy won't get to the roots of the hair, so maybe they wouldn't lose all their hair. And in fact, I asked when I was diagnosed with leukemia, because I'd lost my hair twice before, it's not that fun, and it was going into winter, I said to the doctor, can I do the cold cap? And she said, well, you're not a candidate for the cold cap because leukemia likes to hang out in the spinal column and the brain, and so we want it to get all the way. And in fact, we're going to be giving you intrathecal chemo, which is chemotherapy into your spine. I had 6 of those for shits and giggles, excuse my French. Yeah, so I would say that the conventional medical world, like, they're open to it. Every doctor I ever had always says to me, whatever you're doing, keep doing it, you're doing great. They don't usually ask me what I'm doing, which doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But every one of them blurbed my book. They all wrote advanced praise for my book. So, I know that they're into it. They don't have that kind of time. My transplant doc, a wonderful guy named Zach DePhillip, I knew he was the right guy for me for a lot of different reasons, but I had done a deep dive and looked at what his research was in, and his research was in, this has a big ick factor, but you'll get over it in a minute. It's called fecal microbial transplant. This is where you're using, healthy specimen, all cleaned and prepared correctly, stool of a healthy person with a healthy microbiome. It's FDA approved for things like C. diff, that really bad diarrheal infection people get in hospitals. It's not really FDA approved for anything else, but there are, he was doing studies on FMT for people who had transplants like me. One of the big risk factors is graft versus host disease. And for people that failed conventional treatment when they had very bad graft versus host disease, which caused colitis, really bad digestive complaints, and doing FMT. So I knew he was already, if he was doing FMT on people, he was my guy, because that's all about the microbiome and all that thing. I knew, my husband and I, particularly Paul, because I wasn't feeling that great, did the deep dive on what is the best microbiome into which to put a stem cell transplant. It turns out it's a microbiome that is methionine restricted. Methionine is one amino acid, which is a building block of protein. The way you can create an environment like that is to eat a vegan diet with fish. So for the 4 months leading up to my transplant, I ate a vegan diet with fish. and I aimed for 65 to 70 grams of protein a day, which is a lot of protein. I'm not a big person. And by the end of the day, I was doing the scoop of the pea powder because I couldn't get up to 70 grams to kill myself. So a lot of quinoa and a lot of nuts. But I haven't had any graft-versus-host disease, nothing. I mean, literally nothing. And I think that that's information that they should be doing with every single patient. And there are a lot of things like that. I mean, there is more and more interest. Like every cancer center now around the country has an integrative medicine opportunity where there's, you can do yoga, you can get massage, you can have Reiki. These are all really nice things, but there's way more that can be done really with therapeutic nutrition, herbal medicine, supplements. And you have to be careful because you don't want to interfere with the efficacy of the conventional care. And many oncologists say, don't take any supplements, don't take any, don't. But the truth of it is that the research in like PubMed, which is the clearinghouse for medical research, there's a lot of really good research being done showing that many of these things are safe, are effective, don't have side effects, don't interfere with the efficacy of the conventional care. So I think this is the future of cancer care. I 100% think this is the direction it's going. I have a meeting, you can ask me in a few months, in April with the survivorship team. And I was talking to them initially, and they set it up. You work with the psych person, and you work with the physical body person. And I said to them, by the way, have you seen my book? I wrote a whole book on this topic. So I'm going to go and like get the treatment as the patient, and then I'm going to be like, and now we have to have a meeting about this, because I want patients to feel empowered, and I want people to be safe, and what this information in this book is also pertinent for people who are living with cancer. There's a lot of people now living with metastatic disease. They are not going to die tomorrow from the cancer they have. They can have years with metastatic disease, which is different than 20, 30 years ago. And so people can optimize sort of where they are now. And then for some people, if they can live long enough, there will be advances in conventional medicine that will actually be curative for them. I believe that. I really believe that. So, unfortunately, when I was in medical school, the number was 1 in 4 people were going to get cancer. And then about 20 years, it was 1 in 3. Now it's almost it's also half of people, especially when you include skin cancers, which many of them are not that serious, but some of them are very serious. So, and everybody knows somebody that's had cancer. I mean, it's so epidemic. And my hope is that, this will be the real future. And I'm very excited about it. I feel like there's so much to learn and know and do. And a lot of doctors are more and more open to it because their patients are demanding it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What else?
I have a question.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you're a doctor, and your husband is a doctor.
Yeah.
And you've done tons of research and stuff while you were going through, cancer and leukemia. How can we mortals kind of like...
Right, yeah, right, exactly.
Is it
I think...
hard for us, or is it impossible for us, really?
Yeah.
Because you've had so many advantages.
I did.
It's
so true. Yeah, I always say to my husband, it's like, I don't know how people ever raise a family without being a doctor. This is like, there's a lot to know, it's true. I think you have to build a team, and that's what it is. And I always felt like I had a dream team. I had 3, I've done a lot of work for my profession. I spearheaded the effort to license naturopathic doctors in this state. We thought it would take us 5 or 6 years. It took 27 years. I mean, it took a long time. I hold license number 1 in the state of Massachusetts, and my husband owns license number 2. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, that was a lot of work. But there are now 30 states that license naturopathic doctors. We've got 20 more to go. And I think that because I had done so much, I had a lot of friends and a lot of people who were really happy to repay, and I'd helped a lot of people. So people were lining up to try to help me, which has its pros and cons. One chapter in my book I call How to Talk So Your Doctor Listens and Listen So Your Doctor Talks, which is from that old parenting book, How to Talk So Your Kids Listen and Listen So Your Kids Talk, by Farber and Maslish, one of whom passed away a few years ago. Anyway, and a lot about that chapter is really on how to create that relationship and how to create a dream team, and then how to also get better and feel empowered to say to people, you know what? I'm not taking any information. I feel great about my plan and my team. Thank you so much for your concern. How are your kids? Just like totally pivot it. Just because people just, they're trying to be nice, but like at a certain point you can't take any more in. And the same, and I had a pre-written email like that. I had a pre-written text thing like that because I knew like I had a plan. I had total faith in my plan. I did not want to be distracted by anybody else's woo-woo-woo things. And believe me, my profession, there's a lot of stuff that's extremely grounded in the medical research, and there's a lot of woo-woo stuff out there that people associate with my profession. It's not, but that people think it is. It's complicated. I don't want that. I don't need that. It's not going to help me. And I feel like that's important. So creating a dream team, to answer your question, and then feeling good about your team. We always borrow the expression from scuba diving, which is we're going to plan the dive and we're going to dive the plan. And I literally just put my blinders on and do that. I mean, I was very lucky. I have a one-man research phenom as a husband. My husband, Paul Hersky, is brilliant on a lot of levels, and he loves me so much. And so he just did a lot of research, and he called all the specialists all over the world about what I had and why I had it and what we can do and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's a little harder if you're not a doctor, but not impossible. And it's much easier now than it used to be because of the internet, which of course is a slippery slope. There's a lot of good stuff there, but then there's a lot of distraction. So I think, look, if I were diagnosed with cancer and I wasn't a naturopathic doctor, I would try to go see a naturopathic doctor who specializes in oncology. There's a whole organization, it's called the Oncology Association of Naturopathic Physicians, is that right? OnCamp. And there is specialty board training in oncology for naturopathic doctors. And you can be board certified. I am not. I have never done that training. It kind of started a little bit after my time. And I refer to these people often. I can deal with like basic stuff, but anything that's a little more complicated, go see, there's a gal, Amy Littlefield, up in Vermont, who's terrific. There's a few other people around, and a lot of people work through telemedicine. Yeah, this is a really good question. It's a really good question. Yeah?
I had a question about, you had a dream team, and I had a question about the role of the hospitalist, because what I've seen is, at least it may be in certain settings, you're not assigned one hospitalist. You can have different ones coming through. And so I was wondering what your experience has been.
Well, when I had breast cancer and ovarian cancer, you basically, with breast cancer, you have a surgeon, and then you have the oncologist who manages your meds, and you have your radiation oncologist if that's your thing. You had a plastic surgeon, like I have beautiful little new boobs that silver lining. I had really big boobs to start. This is like way nicer. And I never have to wear a bra, which is really, and the other silver lining is that I was very athletic, but I never was a runner because I had big, it's not that fun to run. And so at 54, double mastectomy, all of a sudden I'm a runner. I started doing triathlons. I'm like actually a good runner. Who knew? And then with ovarian cancer, it's the same person who does the surgery and your medicine stuff. With leukemia, it's like a whole different way. First, you have your leukemia doctor who does everything related to getting you ready. Then you have your transplant doctor. Then when you're in the hospital, it's not a hospitalist. It's like the leukemia doctors on the floor. They change every 10 days. It's not really a hospitalist setting. Hospitalists are more working with people that are in the hospital for a period of time, and they have general expertise of dealing with patients in the hospital, but it's not really related to so much to oncology. I don't know if that answered your question. Yeah.
Other folks? Any questions? Well, thank you very much, Amy.
You're very welcome, everybody. And if you know anybody who needs the book, I'm happy to sell you one if you like. And you can also get it. I read it for Audible. So it's, yes, I did. And my husband said that if you get it on Audible, listen to it at 1.2. It'll be more like me.
You are a fast talker.
I am a New Yorker. What can I say? But it's an Amazon bestseller. It did win a Nautilus Book Award last year, which is very exciting. And it's doing very well. And I'm working on the sequel. Yeah, I think it's gonna be good. I'm not gonna wait 10 years to write it because at this point, I may not have 10 years. So I'm gonna write it as I can.
Again,
You're welcome.
Truly a powerhouse, and this was
Thank
really,
you.
really inspiring for me, and I hope for everybody.
Thank you for having me.
This is
Yeah.
a little gift from
Oh,
the.
it's so
from the
beautiful. It matches my
Amherst.
outfit. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
And you do get a membership into the women's
Oh.
club for the next year.
Amazing.
So-
I'll come to some other talks.
Thank you again. This is
Thank
really
you.
great.